The film starts off evolved with the advent of Jimmy, who changed into a prisoner. He stares at pics of himself and his brother at the wall of his jail mobilular. Then rapidly after a jail defend involves him. The Protect takes Jimmy out of his mobilular due to the fact that could be Jimmy's date with freedom after such a lot of years in jail. Earlier than freeing Jimmy, they requested him to seem earlier than the warden. The warden recommended Jimmy to begin a brand new lifestyles, to be a terrific citizen and to abide with the aid of using the legal guidelines of the USA. However, it appears that evidently Jimmy become now no longer inquisitive about what the warden stated due to the fact he could not wait to get out. In the meantime, we see a corrupt police officer. This officer turned into managing a drug supplier due to the fact he become an addict. Jimmy receives his automobile lower back after his launch from jail. He additionally obtains a gun and statistics on a person who changed into his target. Then he drives his automobile and heads towards his vacation spot, California, and with consistent steps followed with the aid of using a choice for revenge, Jimmy walked right into a constructing and killed the person whose facts turned into on report after Jimmy kills the primary target. He is going to fulfill a man named Roy. Roy is the individual that gave Jimmy the auto and the gun. Roy turned into a relied on informant. Jimmy requested Roy to offer him records for different human beings due to the fact Jimmy organized a revenge plan all through his time in jail, and due to the fact Roy is someone who does now no longer want to be threatened via way of means of anybody. He contacts his bodyguard. However, Roy's bodyguard found that Jimmy is the individual nicknamed the Ghost and is likewise the maximum terrifying crook, so the bodyguard determined to withdraw with inside the absence of some other choice for Roy, and for worry of being killed, Roy offers Jimmy all of the statistics he wishes, approximately the humans, at the same time as Jimmy is going searching out goals the corrupt police officer. And the police officers look at the primary homicide. Then we see a person dubbed the killer obtain a smartphone name, and this guy works as an expert killer. The decision become the task of a person asking the killer to kill Jimmy. Throughout the research of the primary homicide, the corrupt officer cooperates with the detective Cicero, and Cicero changed into capable of reap statistics approximately Jimmy and discovered that Jimmy turned into concerned in a primary theft and determined that he became nicknamed the motive force due to his excessive writing talent. We move again in time to the day of the theft. While Jimmy and his gang controlled to Scouse Barrow, they have been ambushed with the aid of using any other organization of thieves who killed contributors of Jimmy's gang, such as Jimmy's brother, who turned into brutally killed earlier than Jimmy's eyes. Then Jimmy changed into shot with inside the head, and the thieves' notion he changed into lifeless. However, Jimmy changed into stored via way of means of a crew of medical doctors and placed an iron plate in his head. Then they placed Jimmy in prison. Detective Cicero concluded that Jimmy may need revenge after his launch from jail. In the meantime, Jimmy is capable of discover his second goal, Kenneth Tyson. He changed into a middle elderly guy and he turned into the only who filmed the robbers who attacked Jimmy and his gang. We watched the killer search out Jimmy. After Jimmy reveals his target and kills him, Jimmy leaves the scene at once. However, the killer intercepts Jimmy and gunfire is exchanged among them. Jimmy manages to break out unhurt. The killer found out that Jimmy become best killing his goals and now no longer harming absolutely everyone else. After that, Jimmy visits his ex-lady friend who reveals out that Jimmy is killing the ones concerned and killing his brother. Jimmy's female friend began out to get aggravated that Jimmy had deserted her. However, Jimmy informed her he needed to do it to shield her and their unborn infant. However, she had tears in her eyes and instructed Jimmy that she had miscarried the kid and determined to begin a brand new lifestyles with any other guy and obtain her happiness. Far from Jimmy, she wanted Jimmy all of the fine, and Jimmy walked away to keep his venture of revenge. At a Nevada Strip membership, Jimmy unearths his subsequent target, a person named Nixon, wherein Jimmy were given right into a combat with this man. Jimmy controlled to stab this guy and left the scene straight away. Day after today, for the duration of the radio news bulletin, Jimmy discovered that Nixon had now no longer died and that he became in a essential situation with inside the medical institution. Jimmy determined to go back to finish his project. In the meantime, the corrupt officer learns that Jimmy become the only who stabbed Nixon at a strip membership, so this officer went to the health center due to the fact he concept Jimmy might be there to kill Nixon and entire his project, and we see the person that dispatched the killers to kill Jimmy sends the area Jimmy, who become heading to the sanatorium to kill Nixon. After Jimmy arrived on the medical institution, Jimmy went directly to the running room and with none mercy he killed Nixon instant. While the corrupt officer heard the gunfire, he ran to peer what passed off. However, noticed Jimmy strolling away. He chased after Jimmy and that they exchanged Hearth Place. However, Jimmy manages to vanish and escape. After Jimmy runs away, he realizes that a person is after him. Due to Jimmy's driving experience, Jimmy turned into capable of placed the killer in the front of him and he directed the gun on the killer and become capable of kill him. However, Jimmy handiest shot the automobile tire. However, the killer needed to perform his project So he shot Jimmy, however the bullet hit Jimmy's neck after a chase among Jimmy and the killer. Jimmy is going to his dad and mom residence. Jimmy meant to kill his father due to the fact Jimmy believed that his father had organized the homicide of Jimmy and his brother and Jimmy concept. So due to the fact they refused to proportion the cash after the financial institution theft at domestic, Jimmy's mother turned into tending to Jimmy's wounds and changed into seeking to persuade him that his dad failed to do it. Then Jimmy notion his brother's lady friend set them up. Then Jimmy is going to preserve the revenge technique and kills the final target, and this guy is known as Alexander Jared. This guy became a visiting missionary for the duration of Jimmy's revenge mission. Jimmy listens to a radio broadcast of Jared's non-secular lecture on moves along with theft, homicide and revenge. In the meantime we watched the police officers reward the corrupt officer for his braveness in confronting Jimmy. This officer informed Detective Cicero that the humans Jimmy had killed have been concerned in a theft. Then the officer went to forestall Jimmy from killing Jared. Now no longer handiest did the officer visit Jared's whereabouts, however the killer additionally were given facts and went there. Then Jimmy went to the area wherein Jared changed into. Jared knew what had came about to his buddies and became lecturing on revenge and hate. Jared took Jimmy far from the humans. Jared informed Jimmy that he had repented of what he had performed and had began a brand new lifestyles. He whipped and begged Jimmy to forgive him. Jimmy pointed the gun at Jared, however Jimmy, after listening to Jared's apology, determined now no longer to kill him. Then Jimmy went again to the location in which Jared had suggested humans. He sat on my own and started out to consider all his movements and sins. Then the killer arrives on the vicinity and factors a gun at Jimmy, who becomes searching at a photograph of the human beings he killed. The killer tells Jimmy that he's going to entire his challenge and kill him, however earlier than that the killer tells Jimmy that a person else with inside the gang is liable for killing Jimmy's brother, and the killer tells Jimmy that this character is a person Jimmy is aware of, and the killer tells Jimmy that this man or woman knew that Jimmy might go back for revenge. Due to this character employed the killer on a project to kill Jimmy earlier than he reached him. Detective Cicero learns that a person else became worried with inside the homicide of Jimmy's brother. She controlled to show his actual identification. In the meantime, at the same time as the killer turned into pointing his gun at Jimmy, the police officer entered the scene and pointed the gun at Jimmy. Then the officer shoots Jimmy, and we realize that this corrupt officer is the only who shot Jimmy with inside the theft. He turned into the mastermind at the back of the homicide of Jimmy's brother and his gang. We found out that it changed into Jimmy's brother's female friend, who informed the corrupt officer the whole lot, approximately the theft. Then the corrupt officer went out with the killer and provided the cash to the killer. However the killer refused the cash and instructed the officer now no longer to touch him. Once more the corrupt official's idea it turned into threw out and referred to as his spouse, who became out to be Jimmy's brother's lady friend. However we watched Jimmy shoot the corrupt officer, wherein we determined out that the bullet hit the metallic plate positioned via way of means of Doc's and Jimmy cranium. Then Detective Cicero arrives on the scene after Jimmy's departure. Cicero is withholding statistics that factors to the involvement of the corrupt officer. We watched Jimmy throw his brother's ashes into the ocean. We watched Jared lecturing on forgiveness, hate and revenge, and right here the film ends.